7.EE.4 on to number 5. So solve the equation, identify the sequence of operations used. So solve this equation. So we have, this is number 5, 1/2 y minus 21 over 4 equals negative 35 over 4. So let's solve this. Common denominator, which is nice. So identify the sequence. So the first thing we're going to do is add 21 over 4 to both sides. Add 21 over 4. These cancel. Bring everything down. So 1/2 y equals negative 35 plus 21 is negative 14 over 4. Now we need to divide by 1/2 on both sides. These will cancel and y equals, we need to rewrite this, so negative 14 over 4 divided by 1/2 and we don't divide fractions, we can't, so we have to multiply by the reciprocal, so negative 14 over 4 times 2 over 1. I see a 2 and a 4. Let's simplify here. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2. We can simplify again, but let's multiply this out. We get negative 14 over 2. Simplify negative 14 divided by 2 is negative 7. So when we solve it, we get y equals negative 7. And we need to identify the sequence of operations. So the first thing we need to do is add 21 over 4 on both sides of the equal sign. So on both sides. Then we need to divide by 1/2. We don't divide fractions. We actually have to multiply by the reciprocal, so we divide by 1/2, which is the same as multiplying by 2 over 1. On to number 6. On to number 6. Kathy earns $13.50 per hour for the first 40 hours worked in a week, and $20.25 per hour for hours over 40 hours. If she earns this much one week, how many hours does she work? Well, the first thing we need to do is determine if that is over 40 hours. So if she works, she makes $13.50. If she works for 40 hours, how much does she make? $540. So according to the problem, she makes more than that, so she makes more than 40. So we can start out by, okay, she makes $13.50 for 40 hours. And we actually just did that multiplication right here because she works for 40 hours, but she's not done working. So we need to add more. What are we adding? Now she earns $20.25 for each hour over 40. Do we know how many hours over 40 it was? No. So we need to put in our X. But we know that after all this work, she made $661.50. And so show your work using a variable that represents the time in hours that Kathy works over 40 hours. Okay, so we need to solve this problem. We already did this multiplication. 1350 times 40 gives us 540. We'll just bring everything else down. Plus 20.25x equals $661.50. So let's just keep solving. We need to get rid of this 540. When we subtract, 1 minus 0 is 1, 6 minus 4 is 2, and 6 minus 5 is 1. So we get $121.50 equals $20.25 times the number of hours. So now we need to get that by itself, divide by 20.25, divide by 20.25. And we get x equals 121.50 divided by 20.25, and we get 6. So 6 hours. So there are two answers here, because it wants to know how many hours does she work. Well, according to this, she worked 6 hours more than 40, so she actually works, let's see, total hours equals 46. And show your work using a variable, we used x, that Kathy works over 40 hours, so she works 6 hours over 40 hours. On to number 7. Kevin is selling 7 identical alternators and a car wheel for scrap. He knows the wheel weighs 19.5 pounds. He puts all the items on a scale at the scrap yard, and the total weight is 112.25 pounds. Find the weight of each alternator, A, in pounds algebraically. Show your work. Okay, so he's starting with this wheel, and it weighs 19.5 pounds. Plus, he has 7 alternators. Do we know how much one costs or one weighs? No. But we have 7 of them. So whatever the weight is, we need to multiply by 7. And it tells us that we want to use A. I like to use X, but they're telling us to use A. So the wheel plus the 7 alternators equals 112.25 pounds. And now we just solve. So we need to subtract 19.5 from both sides, and let's subtract that. 5 minus 0 is 5. We need to borrow here. 2 becomes a 1. This 1 becomes a 12. 12 minus 5 is 7. Bring down the decimal. Borrow from the 0. Make this 11 minus 9 is 2. I need to borrow from the 0. Now we have 10 minus 1 is 9. So we have 7A equals $92.75 pounds. To get A by itself, to find how much one alternator is, divide by 7 on both sides. So A equals, and we're just going to grab the calculator for that one, 92.75 divided by 7, 13.25. So find the weight of each alternator, 13.25 pounds.